So this brings us to a core category of challenges, which is that there's a challenge, there are challenges that arise from our own ego mind, which I described earlier of my own self, like the part of me that had other ideas and expectations and desires connected to this that didn't want to accept certain truths. Like that was my state of mind, my being, and we might also say that was sort of patterning or my conditioned patterning, which has dissipated and dissolved over the course of my sadness up to this point, because I was able to heal and to purify the core causes of the part of me that wanted to stay in a dysfunctional experience, for instance, that was willing to tolerate that dysfunctional experience. And so these challenges of the ego, they happen when our ability to get clear information or guidance is clouded by our own karmic patterns and our projections, what we want to believe, what the story that we want to tell about it, that we superimpose that over it, and we tune out whatever our intuition may potentially be telling us. So this is another benefit of consciously engaging in a deeper connection with our true self as spirit or consciousness, and of learning the proper methods to purify karma and healing from the past influences. So as I mentioned, of course, I've been doing my own sadhana and my own healing, and so I have changed and modified and cleansed and purified certain karmic patterns that have allowed me to be able to clearly see what I was doing back in the day, but also to allow me to avoid repeating that situation, of not bringing that situation back into my life. And so the ego mind tends to polarize things and can overlay its access to our intuition with our own those fears, biases, and desires. In other words, without greater discernment, it's easy to make a mistake of our conditioned experience, thoughts, and feelings, and to think that our ego mind, the desires that I described having of the fear and wanting it to work out, etc., to think that is my intuition, and to sort of convince myself that what my mind is telling me, what my ego wants, is intuition, and therefore I should trust that. And so we want to be able to learn to make a discernment between, like, is this my ego or is this actual intuition? And we want to strengthen, to avoid letting the ego strengthen something that we already believe to be true or to justify our karmic conditioning in some way. And so one challenge that happens from the ego is that we have to be able to separate our intuition from our fears. So in the case of my Tarot experience back in the day, my fear was the relationship wouldn't work out. And I didn't want to accept that. And so that got kind of in the way of things. And it's also possible that there could be a case that someone's working with Tarot, for instance, and they're actually on the right track. They're going in the right direction, but they're afraid that it's not going to work out. And so superimpose their actual fear onto a really good possibility and opportunity as well. This is why we have to start to be able to discern, like, where is it coming from potentially in my ego, my desires, my expectations, my fears that are really just part of that conditioned part of me, and where is the actual intuitive part coming from? So this is learning how to understand the influence that the fears, the different ways that fears can show up from our ego, and how they might interact with our intuitive guidance. Learning how to make that discernment, that distinction between our intuitive insights versus fear thoughts that we're having. And then practice for cultivating self-awareness to recognize and overcome those anxieties and insecurities. So we have to be mindful of when our ego is bringing up fears and what that might mean in the process. Whether we are avoiding fears that we really should be paying attention to, or whether we are afraid of something, even though there's a lot of reason that we should probably continue to go for it, that we're bypassing the guidance of going in a new direction because we're just afraid of what might happen, even though it might actually be good for us.